Quiet on set, you damn kids! Who wants to make a short? We'll pay you in IMDb credits and experience. Lights, camera, action, it's I Don't Give a Flick, your favorite film podcast. Oh yeah, Tarantino, Mero, and Spielberg, here's looking at you, kid.
We talk movies and TV shows and sometimes other things we like.
And Nolan's coming right at your fucking face. Every minute of every day will never stop.
We'll talk lenses, music, and Foley. We'll understand the depth of field.
We've got theories so out of this world and epic it'll blow off your fucking tits.
Oh yeah, that was bullshit. We were already talking about the dankness of the memes, Michael. You missed it whilst you were peeing.
I
was urinating.
And I had my own level of dank.
For this episode, we're all going to use a different accent the whole time.
I'm not going to do that.
Yep, yeah.
I'm not going to do
everybody's got to do it.
Oh, yeah, that sounds real good, eh?
Is monotone an accent?
No.
Can I do that?
No, Michael, we've been working on this. You can talk. Use your words.
Johnny's the showrunner. If he says I don't have to do it, then I'm going to go ahead and go side with him on this.
You got to do it. Come on. What you got, Luke?
Well, Gary is the editing supervisor.
Good idea, eh?
We all have to
set your evil Canadian twin.
How about every 5 minutes we have to switch accents?
Change places.
Change places. Everyone choose a new dialect.
Jesus Christ.
Here's what Hollywood royalty looked like in every decade of the last 90 years.
All right, let us start with a mic check.
Mic check.
Everyone will do mic check in your chosen accent.
Microphone check 1, 2.
It's as loud as you talk, really?
It's an accent.
It's not an accent.
Being quiet
the volume of your voice
accent.
is not an accent, sir.
I was doing the accent of a quiet person.
Okay, I see.
Okay, Michael, let us hear your accent. Give me mic check now. Give it to me.
Yeah, I'm going doing the mic check, just checking out the mic check. And
excellent work. Hold on to that, Michael. Do not lose that accent the whole time. You can do it.
Yep, yeah, I'm going to talk about the movies, 1940, just go about stroke.
Right.
Okay.
There you go, Boomer.
Johnny, it is time for your accent. Let us hear.
Well, here's the problem. What's my motivation? I need motivation.
Here's your motivation. You're tired. You're hungry. You're lost in the woods.
Oh, yeah. All right. Snap into a Slim Jim.
Yes. Can you do Macho Man
Randy Savage just the entire
whole time?
Oh, yeah. Welcome to another episode of Do Give a Flick.
Okay.
I can do Macho Man from fucking Spider-Man. That's I just take those 4 lines.
For 3 minutes of
freak show.
I got 3 minutes of playtime.
Owensaw is ready.
All right. I believe we all ready and we all have our accents. Hold on to them tight, like a woman next to you in the night.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of I Don't Give a Flick. I am your host, Johnny Blackburn, and alongside me this week, I've got the man with the plan,
Gary Elmore.
Neil will be back next week. He had some things to attend to, but we are proud and privileged to welcome back to the show Lucas Herr, film enthusiast and downright good Samaritan. Luke, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome, Luke. And we're also going to welcome back for the 80th time, Mr. Michael Bring In the Pain. Michael, welcome.
Yo, although 80 is an exaggeration, but I'll take it.
It is. It's like, what, your third episode? Fourth? Third or fourth?
On the 81st is when I get the paycheck, right?
Yes, correct.
When he introduces you as Michael Bringing the Pain, that is the perfect time to use the Macho Man Randy Savage accent.
It really is.
Oh yeah, Payne.
Michael Bringing the Pain.
And yet it doesn't exist.
Michael's House of Pain.
And yet it's not here.
And it's not here. And we're also welcoming back for the 15th time, 16th time, I guess, at this point. Host of the popular podcast series, Movies So Bad They're Good, Midnight Cult Classics in Camp, and the Facebook group of the same name. And also having a beer with Ian podcast host, Ian Webb. Ian, welcome back to the show.
Hey.
Ian is very tired and delirious and probably delusional at this point. He's probably not even going to remember this episode because it's very late at night.
I'm not even sure if this is reality or if I'm dreaming right now.
We're talking about the Matrix today, so that's perfect.
You're in a Stanley Kubrick film.
You're in the motherfucking Matrix.
Whoa, no cursing, Michael.
Oh.
It's late at night. We're all hopped up on caffeine. We're going to jump right into it. Today's episode is about the death of A-listers and theater. Where have our A-listers in Hollywood gone? What's happening to them? What's happening to movie theaters? Are they dying?
All the A-listers gone. Long time coming.
Quick, get the penny whistle.
Oh my God, yes.
Can you play that?
No, I need to have the music.
No, not the slide whistle, Ian. We need Gary's penny whistle.
He's got a sound bar that he just plugged off on right there.
He claimed
I have a slide whistle.
He actually has a slide whistle next to him.
That's great.
That's what he's. We're gonna jump into this here really quick because I have no idea how long it's gonna last. Could be short, could be long. Who the fuck knows?
If you're still listening at this point, congratulations. I don't know how you did it.
I don't know when Gary started recording, but if you've listened to the last 30 minutes of banter, then
I'm sorry.
Then I do apologize in advance because we are very unprofessional right now. It is very late. I need to ask in general, regardless of genre. I want to go around the panel and see who your favorite movie star was of all time. It doesn't matter what decade it was. And we're going to start with Gary because Gary loves movie stars. When he sees a movie star, he just loves it.
Yeah.
So go ahead. Who's your favorite movie star, Gary, of all time?
I think this would be different than like the top 10 actors list we did, right?
Correct. It would just be movies that these guys, if their name is attached, it's going to bring home X amount of dollars, and people are going to see it just to see that actor.
So we're saying like what we think the biggest movie star is.
No, just your favorite. Who's your favorite? Do you love Bruce Willis, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Adam Sandler? Who is it?
Yeah, there's just so many because they play so many different roles and types.
They do.
Tom Hanks probably has like the most number of my highest rated parts. So I guess I'll go with Tom Hanks on that.
That's a pretty good one. So I would dare to guess. Well, I'll get to the decades in a second. So I'll hold on. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm hyper. I'm caffeined up.
Yep.
Luke, we're going to jump to you. Who's your favorite movie star of all time?
I think I'm gonna go with Harrison Ford.
That's a very good pick. And you're an asshole because that would have been
was
Neil's pick. Exactly. That would have been Neil's pick and you stole it.
Well, he's not here.
That's
true.
It
was tough. It was either Jimmy Stewart or Harrison Ford.
Jimmy Stewart's also a good one. But I'm not surprised you went with Harrison Ford. That is a classic choice and a good choice as well. Ian, how about you? Favorite movie star of all time?
I might have to go with Gary Oldman.
All right, yeah. Anybody named Gary is amazing.
That's good.
That is a good one. That's an interesting one. I guess I never really thought of him as like an A-lister. Well, no, not a movie star, but like an A-lister that would carry a movie by himself. But he is always good in every role I've ever seen him in.
Did he make like your number 3 list of famous? Right, that's a favorite of all time.
So that's a best actors. That's a best actors of all time. This is somebody that carries a film just by having their name attached to it. But I could sure. I mean,
now you say that.
Yeah, I thought this was just
literally just
actor.
say that.
No, I never.
Oh my God, Johnny, what is happening
I feel
here?
like in every episode we get into this, somehow you guys get confused by the question I ask, and I have to repeat it like 3 or 4 times. It's not your favorite actor of all time. It's your favorite movie star of all time.
You literally just said who's your favorite actor.
He said favorite A-list actor.
I said A-lister. I did not say actor. I did not say actor. It's fine. It doesn't matter. Gary Oldman's a really good pick.
We'll circle back to me.
No. Gary Oldman's that's a great pick. It's fine. It's a fantastic pick. Michael, how about you?
I'm going to have to go with Christopher Lee. I think he's
dope.
Yeah, I think he's a lot of fun to watch. A lot of really just like, I don't know if you're going to call it high end, but was in a lot of really good stuff in the 50s and 60s, and then just started going full camp after a while.
Yeah.
And so just everything he's in, it's just a lot of fun.
Michael, do you have any particular stories of Christopher Lee that you wanted to share?
Oh, when he like flat out is like, hey, I want to say it was one of the Lord of the Rings movies. It was probably the Return of the King when he was talking to Peter Jackson. They filmed them all at the same time, but it was specific scenes from Return of the King when Christopher Lee's character Saruman is supposed to get stabbed in the back, and they go and film it, and Peter Jackson calls cut and approaches Christopher Lee And it's like, hey, they filmed it, it's great, but we need to reshoot it because I need you to scream or I need you to yell or something when you get stabbed in the back. And Christopher Lee just looks Peter Jackson like deadpan in the face and is like,
I seem to recall that I did say to Peter, have you any idea of what kind of noise happens when somebody's stabbed in the back? And I said, well, because I do.
Oh, yeah. That's classic.
Because he fought in the Great World War II.
Yep.
Did he?
Yes, he did.
Really? I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's old enough to.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
And he was also a heavy metal artist.
Yes, was in a
yeah.
Christopher Lee? I didn't know that.
Yep.
No shit.
Headbanging
on his
heavy metal.
90th birthday,
Dope.
he recorded a metal album.
Right on. I'd have to say mine is going to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it was a tie for me between Adam Sandler and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I don't understand the question.
Looking at
Are you trolling or are you going to explain real quick?
It says, who's your favorite movie star?
Oh.
Yeah.
So, but movie star is not the same as actor. Movie star is like A-list who can carry a film. Like Tom Cruise's new movie is out.
Right.
It's going because it's Tom Cruise.
Right. Exactly. So exactly. So I mean, Luke literally just explained it. Yes. So who would be your favorite?
Thank you, Luke, for being so cogent in that explanation.
I feel like I was
appreciate
cogent at the beginning when I told you guys what I was looking for, and you're all just tired and not listening.
I should be in broadcasting. Or
You
something.
should. It's almost like you've got a face for radio. Mine is definitely going to be Schwarzenegger, though. I don't really think I've ever seen a movie of his, regardless of how bad it was, that I didn't fucking enjoy.
We have to go around the panel, I think, and all say our favorite one-liner from a Schwarzenegger movie. I think that's just required, isn't it?
We can totally do that. I'm going to start with, it's not a tumor.
All right.
Nice.
I'll see your It's Not a Tumor, and I'll raise you, let off some steam, Bennett.
I'll say, get down.
Get to the chopper. Put that cookie down.
I hope you have enough room for my fist because I'm about to ram it into your stomach and break your goddamn spine.
Wow, that was really good impersonation.
That was.
Yeah.
That was certainly the longest one to remember. I'm impressed. I'm surprised
Also
nobody said cool off.
You're just a choir boy compared to me.
There's plenty of classics. I mean,
I'm a cop, you idiot. I mean, like pretty much every line he says. If it bleeds, we can kill it.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
You hold on with your legs
okay.
and reach out with your arms, and I will catch you.
What was Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker? That was from a Christmas movie, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, he admits it.
I was gonna say also, didn't he pull a Donald Trump? It was just like, you're fired. The end of True Lies when he fires the.
That's right.
He did.
Yeah. When he fires the rocket.
Great.
Yeah. What was your favorite decade for movie lead films? So films that were led by some of these guys that we're talking about. So if I were to start out, I would probably say the 80s.
Yeah.
Were mine, I would have to say easily, because you had Schwarzenegger was making huge blockbusters. Bruce Willis was starting out making huge blockbusters. Sigourney Weaver was at her getting to her climax at that point. Gary, what about you?
Phrasing, or we're not doing that. Yeah, I mean the 80s I think was the best decade for sort of the popcorn movies of like, we're just going to have fun here. It's going to be lots of explosions, lots of neon synthesizers. The 80s definitely for me is the best decade.
I'm gonna be. I guess I have to say the 80s too, because that was where my pick was from. And you get into the 90s, it gets a little dark, it gets a little grungy. When you get into the 70s, it's a little low budget. I think the 80s is kind of that peak era. So many of the classic movies came out in the 80s. But yeah, 80s.
Yeah, I guess with the 90s, you had Will Smith, I guess, and who else would have fallen into that era? I guess Brad Pitt kind of was kind of
Leonardo
starting
DiCaprio.
Yeah, I guess his was late 90s, early 2000s when I thought his. Yeah, but see, that's right. The 80s is what it just jumps out.
The 80s is the best.
For this portion, exactly. Michael, how about you? What was your favorite decade for A-list?
See, and that's where it gets interesting because I really like the 2000s, right?
Sure, yeah.
It's you had a lot of really good movies that. I mean, all the classics are from the 80s and the 70s and that great era of just as a nostalgia for a lot of people. But then when you think about the 2000s, you had everything from, the Lord of the Rings films, 300, Gladiator, just tons and tons of movies that came out in the 2000s that had big box office movie stars in them,
Right.
and it was a fun decade for me. I liked it.
It was, absolutely. Yeah, so that's an interesting one. I guess I never thought about, because the 90s and even the 70s I was kind of contemplating putting in, but yeah, the 2000s, I guess I never really thought of it like that. Ian, how about you? What was your favorite decade?
I think that they're all. I mean, this is gonna sound like a cop out, but they're really all good for certain reasons. I guess like I mean, each decade has really good famous actors and performances.
There's
and
A-listers
stuff.
in every decade for sure. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah,
It's a hard pick. It's a hard pick.
I would. A short answer would probably be 90s.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right on.
Are there any A-listers in the 2020s though, Johnny?
Well, Gary, we will get to that in a
Oh.
second. We also just started this decade, so I don't know if that's a fair question to ask quite right now.
Fair enough.
I mean, if you're looking at spillover from the 20 teens, you could probably throw like Dwayne Johnson in there, or maybe a Kevin Hart, or I'm sure there's plenty of people that you could throw in there, but we also have just started the decade, so that's a harder one, and we will get into that portion. But really quick, we wanted to run down a list of the A-listers by decade, people that could carry films on their own, just by their name being attached. Whether it was people from Arnold to Will Smith to Bill Murray
Friedrich March,
to Friedrich March,
that A-lister from the 30s.
A-lister from the 30s, two-time Oscar winner.
Just couldn't make the transition to the talkies very well.
No, he could not. So we're gonna go through this list. We found a list of Hollywood royalty on. We're gonna give a shout out to looks like ranker.com here. Starting out apparently in the 1900s. The 1900s apparently had Hollywood A-listers, I guess, before Charlie Chaplin even came around. This is a little before, I would say, our knowledge exists.
Yeah, these are going to be movies that are like, you've got
barely
a guy,
anything.
Well, you've got a guy playing a piano in the movie theater,
Right,
and it's just
exactly.
kind of like moving at like 15 frames a second.
Sure.
It's like da 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 da
So-
da 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 da
Dun,
da
dun,
da.
dun.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you the names of a few people that are highlighted here, just in case you're curious about learning about the early days of Hollywood and you want to research on your own. We're not going to go super deep into this decade. Florence Turner, Gilbert M. Anderson, and everybody's favorite, Marion Leonard. She was just a dime a dozen. She was just great.
What?
Yeah. She
Shut
was
up, Michael.
Shut up, Michael. This is your last episode.
Womp womp.
We're gonna go to
That's what
the.
you said to me yesterday.
That's true. And then I made the mistake of letting you come back. The 1910s were filled and just riddled with A-listers for the ages, that people that will be ingrained in our memory forever. You got people like Florence Lawrence, William S. Hart, and good old Mary Pickford. Who doesn't love Mary Pickford? I mean, she was my first crush as a teenager. So,
Well, she had a career that she was like on into the 30s, and I think she even had stuff in the 40s, didn't she?
Gary, nobody knows. Did you just look her up, or you've heard of her before?
You haven't? I've heard the name Mary Pickford before. I
I've
can't
never heard
remember
of her.
any particular role she played.
Okay. I mean, literally, the 20s are literally, that's the earliest that my knowledge of cinema goes back to, and even then, in the 20s, it's still pretty sparse. In the 20s, we have rolling in a guy named Rudolph Valentino. You have a young woman named Gloria Swanson, and some nobody named Charlie Chaplin that no one's ever heard of. So, what do they used to call him? Not the little thief, the
Tramp.
The tramp.
It's
There
the
you
dude
go.
with the mustache.
The dude
right?
with the
That's
mustache,
it.
Hitler.
the mustache that Hitler wished that he had.
It's the same mustache.
I think his is a little. No, I guess you're right. His might be a little thicker. I don't know. Moving on into the 30s, we actually finally, I think, we'll start to recognize a few of these actors. You have the Golden Girl, Mae West. You have the original, which what Westerns were to back in the day to action movies nowadays, and in the 80s and such. You have a man by the name of Gary Cooper.
Yep.
Gary loves anybody with that name.
Yes,
I wonder
yeah.
why. And Carol Lombard. I'd never heard of her before. Well, maybe I've seen a movie or two of her. God, Gary Cooper was in pretty much every major Western in the 30s that I can remember.
Always wore a white hat, so you knew he was the good guy.
That's right. We're going to talk about color palette for black and white films. It's
You
not
got
going to be.
two.
You got two. It's not going to be a long episode.
There's gray. So
yeah.
there's three.
Okay, there you go. And then
Excuse me. Excuse me.
and then there's offset white and darker shades of black.
Yes.
So
And,
that's cool.
Pumice. That's probably a color.
that
I don't
too.
know.
I guess
I'm more of an 8 crayon kind of guy. I don't really travel in those circles.
Let's move on to the 40s. The 40s, we get even a little more familiar with people like Betty Davis, Ingrid Bergman, Humphrey Bogart in particular, who would have probably been, I'd say, the biggest A-lister of the 40s. Well, I mean, Jimmy Stewart was on his way.
I would say Humphrey Bogart would probably have edged him out. I think he's probably
maybe in the 40s.
Yeah,
maybe in the 40s. And then Barbara Stanwyck. I know the name. I'm not terribly familiar with her work in particular. Jumping into the 50s, we have people like John Wayne. Never heard of him.
John Wayne was actually around in the 30s as well, though.
As well.
Yeah.
Yes, he was.
I think what was that first movie he did? Stagecoach in like 30.
Was that his first one?
3 or something, and like he sang in it, because the old westerns you'd always have him singing.
I forgot.
Yeah.
I do remember. I remember you talking about that last week.
But John Wayne,
It set him up for Genghis Khan. It's fine.
Yeah, John Wayne, one of my absolute favorite actors, just an icon of American cinema.
You know what was interesting is, did you ever see the how was it called, the A Quiet Man, where he plays he was not the greatest with dialects, but it didn't really matter. Honestly, I thought his Irish dialect, I thought it was pretty bad, but it didn't matter. He's just still a very engaging figure. He'd be one of those guys I put up there with Schwarzenegger for my favorite A-listers. Like, I just grew up watching his films.
I've never thought about that before, Johnny, but I would say that comparing him to Arnold Schwarzenegger would be a pretty apt comparison, because he was pretty much the action star for decades.
Yeah, exactly. People always made fun of him for not having much range, but if you go back and actually
he was home on the range.
I was going to say, if you actually go back and you look at both of their films that were not terribly mainstream, they obviously weren't some of the greatest actors of all time, but they were more versatile than people gave them credit for.
Right,
and that was pretty cool.
And John Wayne actually invented a lot of the camera techniques that they use today. So, like when like somebody punches somebody else or hits them on screen, it's usually filmed like from either like full behind or like 3/4 cheating, and like the person getting hit. John Wayne came up with that, and then he came up. Yeah, he had a lot of interesting ideas.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I didn't fucking know that. And then rounding out the 50s, obviously you would have Jimmy Stewart in there, Doris Day, Marilyn Monroe, and they had William Holden in there, but
of course, Lord Laurence Olivier.
Of course, Laurence Olivier was in there. I mean, the 50s are when we really started seeing the A-list field start to expand, and you started to add, because obviously they were making more movies at that point, and so they need more people to carry it, as movie stars can't do more than probably 2 a year for the most part, especially back in the day.
Back in the day, I think they would just stack them up. Like they would be constantly busy, right?
They were constantly busy, but it took longer to film the movies because, the equipment that they had just was so heavy.
Cameras
to load around.
were not as easy to move.
They
around.
were not, and I mean, they had to build sets for everything. They didn't really get to shoot on location as much as they do nowadays, just because everything's more portable and you can maneuver it easier.
And I think one of the big changeovers that started happening I think it was like the mid or late 50s, could have been the early 60s, was the loosening of contracts with studios and certain actors, because when you had these high-end A-list celebrities, especially in the 30s, 40s, they were tied to a specific studio. So if you saw another big-time movie that was coming out at the neighboring studio, you couldn't really throw your name into the hat to star into the film without breaking your contract with your current studio. And it was it was very cutthroat, apparently, between the studios themselves and trying to protect what they saw as their A-list celebrities. So really couldn't move around.
If only there was an episode we did that talked about the studio system.
Like the fall of the studio system in the 60s. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe if people scroll back to season 1.
Episode 5 or 6. I don't know.
I think it was
4?
Was it 3? I thought
it was
one of our
pretty
first
early
ones.
on. Yeah.
I don't remember. But anyways, good episode to expand on what Michael was talking about.
Good job,
it's an
Michael.
interesting time. It was an interesting time. And into the 60s here, we had people, you had Sidney Poitier, you had the kind of the ending of Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy's careers kind of wrapping up.
No, not Katharine Hepburn.
Elizabeth Taylor. They mentioned Elvis Presley. I mean, he was in a fair amount of stuff.
Yeah,
but
he had a lot of big movies.
he had a lot of
Yeah.
movies. But if you go back and look at the overall rating of them, they did not do very
They
well.
weren't great
But
movies.
the box office numbers were good, so I guess you're right.
I mean, people loved Elvis Presley.
They did.
Well, yeah, Elvis was big. He was definitely like the kind of thing where it was like people would go see it because it was Elvis.
Right. Exactly. And then we jump over into the 70s here. A couple people they had highlighted were you had Steve McQueen, of course.
Yeah.
Great Escape, his best film, in my opinion. Barbara Streisand, Burt Reynolds. Well, I guess the start of Burt Reynolds.
Gene Hackman, I guess he kind of started in the 60s, but, he had like French Connection in the 70s. Clint Eastwood started in the 60s, but he also had like Dirty Harrys and such.
But
in the
80s
70s
is when he really exploded. Yeah, for sure.
Pam Grier.
Pam Grier.
Pam Grier. Yeah, Pam Grier. Throwing it too, Ian.
Would you consider somebody like Jane Fonda a 70s, even though she got her start before that? Because I think she probably had more big films start to come out in the 70s than, but then again, you had Barbarella and stuff like that.
On Golden Pond, that was, I think
1968, I think, because she did that the same
no,
year.
81.
On Golden Pond, yeah. 68 was when Lion and Winter, that's right.
Okay, all right. I was thinking, I don't know, I thought it was 71. Anyways, then we move into the 80s, which is, as we can all agree, was the best decade for
Yes,
A-listers.
absolutely.
And we already had mentioned people like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Harrison Ford, and then you've got you had Meryl Streep, you had Eddie Murphy, Bill Murray, anybody
Bruce
from
Willis,
Chevy Chase, anybody from the SNL casts of the mid to late 70s was starting to make their mark in the 80s and things like that. Moving into the 90s, we see the beginning of Tom Cruise. We see the heyday of Julia Roberts, Will Smith. I had mentioned earlier, early days of Brad Pitt. They had mentioned Demi Moore on here. I just don't know if I would consider her an A-lister
in the 90s.
At a 90s,
oh, absolutely, in the 90s.
Yeah, in the 90s. Like, I mean, let's look up really quick. Let's look up what she did during that era. I counted her as somebody that's a big time movie star, but I don't know about carrying a movie by herself.
Well, I mean, she had
Striptease was 96.
Disclosure.
Yeah, A Few Good Men.
And,
okay.
Right. Remember, Ghost was 1990.
Yeah.
And you want to know the funny thing is, I keep thinking Ghost is early 80s for some reason. I don't know why. I keep forgetting that it's 90. That's a good point. And then Indecent Proposal. So you're right. Yeah, Demi Moore. Yeah, that one certainly makes sense. I am wrong. So I guess they had stopped there. So, just for all of you, kind of just giving you a little background on stars that came from each decade. Maybe there's some people you haven't heard of, or maybe you've heard of them but haven't checked out their movies before. I think on this podcast, what we really try to do outside of looking at new movies for sure
is look at old movies.
But we really try to look at old movies more often because they're just not talked about as much nowadays.
I mean, there are so many classic movies in the last 100 years of cinema that people just, especially our age that are millennials and Generation Z, don't even know about, and it's really sad because those are some of the best movies that were ever made. Exactly.
And so I'm gonna Luke, I'm gonna go to you on this one since you were kind of the one that gave me the idea for tonight's topic. What transition are we seeing with leading actors in films now? You had talked about the market being saturated and streaming coming into play now, and we're not really seeing those titans of A-listers being able to carry movies by themselves now. Where do you think we're headed in the 2020s? Is it going to become extinct? Or are mega movie stars just going to become a thing of the past, or what do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think you still have like carryover, right? So there'll still be guys, Arnold to a degree, but there are still, I think maybe even probably some of the Marvel cast, those are probably the closest thing we have to like current day big A-listers. And so the carryovers will still be there. But I think it'll be hard to get new talent that's going to come up, and I don't think anybody is ever going to be as big as it was back in the 80s and the 70s,
right,
when all people had was 4 channels in the movie theater, and nowadays there's just so much. The barrier to entry is just so much lower. There's so much stuff out there that I just can't see 10 years from now and 20 years from now, people having the same kind of footprint, celebrities and movie stars having the same kind of massive footprint and massive billing that they used to be able to get, like an Arnold movie. I just can't see something getting into the point where you have a movie that's $80 million budget and 40 million of it is because we have to pay Arnold.
Right. Exactly. And what was funny is because you saw, like, we talk about the superhero films a lot, especially nowadays, and Avengers, both Endgame and Infinity War, both had the highest payroll just for cast in the history of cinema by a mile. I mean, it wasn't even close. I'll look it up later. But it was just absolutely ridiculous with the amount of people that they had in there. But if outside of the superhero films, I agree with you. We're not really seeing that over the last 5 years in particular, and especially, I don't think 2020 is a fair comparison to anything because we didn't really have a ton of movies come out. But yeah, I would have to agree that because another article that I was reading the other day was talking about how directors in particular are now they're preferring to go to television because television still is taking the risks that film is just now starting to take. Television started taking those risks with particular topics and ideas and building longer stories because they obviously can, more so than movies did because the studios did not want to invest all these billions of dollars in a franchise again. I mean, outside of Marvel and I guess DC, we're not seeing a ton of franchises right now, so they can't compete with the television shows. You want to tell a story you can tell it maybe over 1 or 2 movies, but nothing like they can do on television. You can tell a whole damn story in 8 fucking episodes all separated within 2 months.
And I think the money shifted too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The streaming services are getting a lot more investment and people are really starting to see that that's where the money is. And I think if you take away Marvel franchise, and especially if you factor in COVID and you factor in, I just don't think I don't know, I'm sure there'll be billion-dollar movies,
sure,
but I don't think they're going to be anywhere near as often as they used to be. And because there's not going to be that much money to be made, budgets are going to be lower, corners are going to be cut. You know what I mean? There's not going to be that much money invested.
A lot of that is because there's so many movies that are going to be coming out that they're going to be a much narrower audience, but a much deeper audience. And so part of that, I think, is you're going to lose the cultural zeitgeist, to use a really trendy word.
Fragmentation.
You're not going to have people that are seeing the same movies and feeling the same way. It's going to just really continue like a splintering and a fracturing of entertainment audiences.
And I think the problem with nowadays with all these coming out is, and we had touched on this briefly in COVID in Hollywood parts 1 and 2, and then when we did our end of season 1 episode in December, was that right now, we're seeing a trend where, because you get, like you were talking about, the streaming services are coming in and they're just gouging out the margins of the audience base. People are wanting to sit at home and watch full-length series that they can binge watch and really get into, as opposed to just a 2-hour film that ends and they're wanting more. It gives them, people want more, and so that's what television shows and streaming services are offering. And due to that fact, I think you're right, Luke, that we're going to see more indie films coming out to the theaters probably here within the next couple of years. And Gary, you had actually mentioned that in another episode.
I think it's also interesting because you also end up with the phenomenon, kind of like you have a never-ending story in terms of the story never concludes because they always want to write another season, do another episode, do another trilogy of movies.
Right.
And especially if you watch movies that are, made in decades prior, they had a conclusion to them. And there's so many stories now that I think really get watered down. I think one of the best examples is House of Cards. I think that would have been a really, really tight show if they'd have done it in 3 seasons, because you'd have kind of like a 3-act play, right? Because it clearly was very Shakespearean in its influences.
A little on the nose.
Yeah, but I mean, you have sort of his rise and then him at the top and then his fall in Act 3. And I think that they extended it so far, a lot of it felt not as good as it could have been if it were shorter. Like Breaking Bad did a great job with that because Vince Gilligan was like, it's going to be 5 seasons or 6 seasons, however long it was, and that's it. We're not going to keep it going until it just finally craps out. And I think, especially the streaming services have a strong incentive to keep that going because they have to push out so much content because people have so much leisure time.
I agreed with you with it.
Okay.
Although I will take this time to say, however, Fargo is great because each season is a different story, as it has a beginning and an end, and it's over after each season, and each season takes place in a different decade.
Yeah, and
so hopefully there's more of that.
It's essentially a limited series, and I think we're going to see more limited series than actual TV shows seasons at this point.
Oh, I was just going to agree as far as the Fargo stuff goes, because I think another television show that really kind of hit that stride correctly was something like American Horror Story, that every single season was a different story. Now, I think at some point in time, they maybe went a little too far by trying to tie it all together into the same universe, and it got kind of crazy after a while. But that idea of, hey, we've got this cast of characters, or we've got these actors and these actresses, and then each season they're going to be playing a different role in a different story and kind of keep stuff moving forward. It was a neat concept, and something that I think kind of harkened back to the old production companies and everything like that. When you'd see the same actors just play different roles, it was fun. And it was a cool idea for a television show to do. I wouldn't be surprised if we started seeing more and more of that.
I think going on with back to where we were talking about, are we going to see a decline in A-listers? I think we're going to have to, because like you guys are talking about, we talked about the market being saturated. I mean, that's it. There's so much competition nowadays without the theaters itself. There's just, with Hulu and Amazon, and you got Shudder now, and you got Quibi, and that's essentially a channel for.
We do not have Quibi anymore. Quibi is officially defunct as of a couple months ago.
Okay, then you did have Quibi. It was essentially just for shorts, But
Yes.
It's like who's going to watch that?
But
there's not enough money in our economy, like in people's entertainment budgets, to go around to all of these streaming services, all these TV shows, the movie theaters, and then fucking YouTube subscriptions for web series. And
I think you're going to have a very similar event that happened in the 80s with the video game industry, because you're going to have so many big budget things out there that need so much money to stay afloat that you're going to have it just collapse, and then it's going to come back, and you're going to have more modest sized releases. I think that it's going to push to have a couple of really big budget movies a year, but you're going to have a lot of the smaller, more independent, more, $10 to $30 to $40 million movies than you do nowadays.
Then the average, a couple $100 million.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a good idea in general, because I think a lot of what has ruined some of the movies, particularly, I think Gary might know where I'm coming with this on Star Trek, is that they have too much money, and there's just not enough innovation, and there's not enough of them kind of having to make compromises. And when you can just throw, or even like Peter Jackson's King Kong, I see the same thing, or the prequels, there's just too much money and too much time, and that equals too much indulgence on screen. And I think you need a little bit of resistance, and you need to have a little bit of corner cutting and stuff in order to balance out the creative impulse that every artist is going to have, which is just to go as deep as possible, as much as you can.
Well, I agree with you there as well. Because I think that a lot of the interestingness of movies comes from having to overcome obstacles. I think one of the best examples is probably Jaws, how their shark didn't work for most of the movie, and so you didn't get to see it, and that really is what made it, when you saw it, really exciting. And but I also think that when you have invested $300 million in a movie and then another $400 million for advertising, you've got to make it so broad that it loses its flavor. And I think that
You got to get that money.
yeah, because like a movie like Goodfellas, they would never make that today. And some of the people on this panel like that movie for some
I
reason.
think everybody on this panel likes that
yeah,
movie.
but I mean, like it's like they would never make that movie today. It's too violent, too, but like when you are not needing to make so much money, you can take more risks. You can be more true to whatever the creative idea you're having is, rather than having to broaden it out to be safe. Because I don't think art is good when you're playing it safe.
Sure, yeah, you have to bend the rules.
Yeah,
you have to
Disney does
destroy
this
boundaries
more than anybody else. They make it just a corporate factory kind of environment. Like all of the Marvel movies feel very. There might be a nice factory, but like they feel very like. We have a formula for how this movie's going to go and how this next one's going to go. And it worked for a lot of the Marvel movies, but I think that all of their I think that takes away from why people like movies. They like you need a little bit of sloppiness in life, I think.
Yeah, and that's the same thing when we were harping on the studio system, and Ian, you probably remember with that episode where we talked about, it was the episode of the remaking of Hollywood, where we were talking about how they just kept recycling the same scripts over and over again. Steven Soderbergh, who I'm sure we're all familiar with, he actually decided to retire from film making, and he's just like with feature films, and he's just doing television shows right now, because he realized that in an interview he was saying, I realized that the future of entertainment is on television. It's on the streaming services, because these new companies that are coming out, they're not the studios that have been the titans of entertainment for the last 80 years. They're new, and they're progressive, and they're innovative, and they're allowing you to break the rules, and the studios are still not even catching up with it,
Right.
And it's confusing. It perplexes the hell out of me, because we've been seeing people in general, they don't want to see the same thing over and over again. I mean, I think that's the history is showing us that. That's why even before COVID was hit, theaters were losing money.
Yeah, they are bringing Frasier back, though. Did you see that?
They are. I saw that a while back. And his son, and they're going to be in Chicago or something, right?
Well,
that's what I heard about.
Yeah, I guess. I haven't heard anything about it other than they're bringing it back.
Okay, I heard that they're going to base it in Chicago.
Will the dog be back?
No, dog's dead.
Pretty sure the dog's dead, Ian.
Dog's name was Eddie, by the way.
They actually had multiple dogs
right.
in that, by the way.
I will make a prediction. Frasier was one of my favorite shows when it was on. I have a prediction that the new one is going to suck.
Probably.
Yeah.
Most of the time, the reboots are usually really bad. So
why would you think that?
The first 4 seasons of Frasier, I think, were really clever and fun. And then I think they were like, this is too highbrow for people. So like, they had to really,
though they were winning Emmys, but
they had to make it more mass appeal, I think.
Sure. So really quick, I did want to go back to what was like, I did really fast want to go back to, you had said that they would never redo Goodfellas because it was too violent. Well, am I misunderstanding what you're trying to communicate?
Not just the violence, I guess. I mean, it was too niche. Like, I don't think that...
like mob films? Because, I mean, all movies and TV shows are way more violent than Goodfellas was nowadays.
Yeah, violent was not the right word.
Oh, okay. All right, I was just confused.
It was too... It appealed to too narrow an audience.
Okay. I don't know if I'd agree with that, but I can see where, I guess, and mob movies are, I mean, gangster and mob movies are certainly out nowadays. It's not, they've had their time to shine. They're 90s, 2000s, and hell, fucking 70s obviously. They're not around anymore. That's for sure.
The ones that do come out don't really work anymore.
No, I mean, you saw when Scorsese tried to, same thing I was talking about with Steven Soderbergh, when Martin Scorsese transitioned to do Boardwalk Empire for those first couple seasons, you kind of saw, and it was successful I thought the first 2 seasons were pretty good. I wasn't really a fan of seasons 3 and 4. But it's, I guess you're right. I guess they have kind of just dwindled out of favor, same thing that zombie movies ended,
Thank goodness, because
10 years ago.
Damn, they
superhero
had way
movies, I
too
think,
many.
just ended. Well, it just ended, but they're not done, because they're obviously going to start coming back once COVID is completely finished and through. And Luke, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You were asking Gary a question about the Frasier reboot.
I was just gonna say, so are you saying you think it just might be a cynical cash grab? I just can't believe that.
Well, not in as many words, but there it is. But I would love it if they went back to like the writing style that Frasier used to have. Because I would love to watch a new Frasier, but I don't think they're going to do a good job with it. But I'll give it a chance unless it's on a streaming service.
Well, it will 100% be on a streaming service.
I guarantee
it'll
it's
probably
on Peacock.
launch NBC's.
I'll probably be on Peacock. I guarantee you. I would assume at least. So just to kind of wrap this portion out. So back in the day, we had seen obviously the marketability of A-listers was one of the main reasons that people went to see movies. Outside of obviously, Luke, you had mentioned, they only had a couple channels and film was, the theaters was the only way to actually go out and watch most things, but the A-listers certainly helped. What's the leading cause of people going to see films nowadays? Before COVID, over the last couple of years, what do we think? Gary and I were debating this earlier, but I'd like to hear what you guys say first. So Michael, let's start with you. What do you think? What do you think nowadays people go to see movies for? What's the draw?
100% the hype train. Like I don't,
Choo-choo.
I honestly don't think it's for many other reasons other than to say, yep, I saw that movie.
Okay.
And with the massive amount of media that's out there nowadays between like Instagram, like the influencers, and Facebook and YouTube and Twitch and all of this stuff out there that these people will constantly pull this media to get hyped about something coming out, it turns into, I just want to see it because of the hype, and really, at least in my opinion, not much else.
Sure. Luke, how about you?
For me, I guess it's typically the IP, and so that kind of makes it's like, is this something I'm interested in seeing? Is this a story that I'm interested in seeing? I mean, maybe the director might be the closest thing to an A-list thing. Like if Chris Nolan is doing something, I'm kind of interested regardless of what it is.
Sure.
But other than that, maybe there's just too many different things. I don't even know if it's just one thing, because there's so much stuff out there. There's so many different things you have to kind of consider.
Yeah. Ian, how about you?
But yeah, people want to see something that's familiar. So, I mean, and A-list actors is definitely a part of that. And so it's basically you get a familiar franchise, you put a familiar face on it.
Sure.
And then there you go. That's all you need.
Yeah, the franchise I could totally see. I mean, we talked about, we're seeing the end of it with Marvel kind of wrapping up. DC never really quite caught the tailwind that came after Marvel, even though they tried. And we'll see what happens. I think they're going to find more success in the TV series,
the
like
unemployment
Star Wars.
line.
Yeah, probably. Well, no, I don't know about that. I mean, we saw what Star Wars was able to do with Mandalorian. I think DC is going to take a page out of that book, and because Marvel just did it with WandaVision, has been making huge strides. I haven't been able to watch it yet, but everybody's been talking about it, and I feel like I do need to get Disney Plus so I can see it. But anyways, no, I mean, I would have to agree with you, Luke. That was my point to Gary earlier, was directors nowadays, I feel like, were the next wave of A-listers. Chris Nolan being one of them, David Fincher, who I had mentioned last night. And for as much as I don't like the guy's movies, Ari Aster, the guy that did Hereditary, did not like that film, but people went and saw Midsommar and made it one of the biggest blockbusters of 2019, whenever it came out that summer.
Yeah.
Because of his name, because they loved Hereditary so much, and the critics loved it. And there's
Quentin's the same way,
Tarantino.
Tarantino's on.
I mean, honestly, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I wasn't a fan. I didn't like it, and I was surprised. It's the only movie of his I really was able to dig, outside of the final 20-minute fight scene they had at the end. It was just kind of lame.
Ironically, that's a celebration of Hollywood, which is what we're talking about the death of.
Right.
Yeah, right. It is ironic, isn't it?
And I think it's kind of interesting, because just as a question to pose is, Johnny, can you think of, is there an actor or actress out there that if they were starring in a movie, the fact that star was in the movie would make you not go see it?
Would make me not
go see it or go see it?
Would not see it.
Yes. If, oh God, see,
maybe
someone
Brie
that's
Larson.
See, well, see, I like Brie Larson in Room. I thought she was good, but yeah, I mean, God, that's an A-lister? Probably not. Probably not. But there's also not a lot of A-listers nowadays. I mean, if you threw
right.
Go
and
ahead.
then same question, is there a director that you would say, I am not going to see that film because of the director?
Correct.
Burton.
Yes. Tim Burton would be one. Ari Aster would be another. I mean, people love him for some reason. I certainly do not.
And I think that's evidence more of it moving towards the focus on the director as the star of the show, as opposed to the A-list actors and actresses.
Yeah.
Because I think people have a much stronger response to directors and the director's body of work than they do actors and actresses at this point.
Yeah.
Well, that stuff bleeds throughout the film. Like, you can tell, you can see, like, that's why a good director is so important, is because there's all the little touches that they do that you can pick up on if you're paying attention, and those little details. You can always tell when it's a Spielberg film or when it's a Scorsese film. There's just little things that they do, the way they pace the scenes, the way they frame the shots, that you can always just tell that little taste. You know, Quentin Tarantino, the same thing. You can always tell there's just something there in the presentation that is just immediate that you pick up on.
Do you guys think that if they were to make a movie and have it, like, say, split the movie into like 7 parts and get a bunch of different directors to direct each part of the movie, that would be a successful movie? Because each one, they've done that on a number of movies.
Commercials, they've done that.
But like,
yeah, I guess.
Yeah, but
Rodriguez and Tarantino.
Do you think that
like
would
4 rooms?
Yeah, but like, you know, do you think that would be an interesting way to do a movie? Because each one would have a very different,
it would be interesting.
Flavor.
It would be interesting. I think it would be a massive failure in the end, just because you can't have that many cooks in the kitchen and that many artistic visions all at once. I mean, the beauty of a film is the coherent storyline throughout 2 hours, you know, and the fact that there's hints to what's going to happen at the end, and hints to what's going to, you know, happen to the character's arc and where they're going to go and how their relationships are going to be formed and how, you know, what the resolution of the story is going to be. And if you have, you know, 7, 8 different people doing that, I could just see it being complete pandemonium. But I would still watch it just to see the train wreck.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I don't know if anybody ever saw the movie The Animatrix.
Yeah, I was actually about to mention that.
Okay,
That's hilarious.
Go ahead, Michael.
Oh, no, Gary, this is your show. You got it.
Well, like, The Animatrix was, it came out during 2002, I think, when The Matrix was releasing the last 2 of its trilogy. And it was, I think, 5 or 7 short stories that were each, you know, told by a different director and a different style and flavor, to kind of give some backstory to what the world of The Matrix was like. And it was really interesting to watch. Just because each of those were like, you had one that was like a noir detective, and then you had another one that was like anime samurai. So it was very interesting to kind of see how that came together.
Yeah.
Here's the thing with that. I think if you do something like that where you're going to have different directors, you have to kind of do the Kevin Feige thing where it's like the directors don't have as much creative power. It's going to be the EP that's going to basically lay out, this is what we're going to do over the course of these films, and I'm going to give you enough room to kind of put your taste on it. But ultimately, the EP is going to be the one who's kind of stewarding the franchise and is going to be making the serious decisions. And those directors are kind of there just for a little bit of taste. And I believe it was like that with the Animatrix, wasn't it? It was the Wachowski brothers were basically in charge of it, and then they let people come in and kind of work within the parameters that they'd set up. But the directors weren't just given carte blanche to do whatever they wanted. They had to stay within a framework.
That was
very true.
That was somewhat similar to the Marvel movies, right? With the Russo brothers, because they were the creative
I use
guys.
Feige as the example, but I think it's the same thing. It's you were
Feige
here,
was
you can put your taste on it, but there's you can only do so much because we got to maintain coherence throughout the whole series.
It was. And I think when it came to something like the Animatrix, it was more about showing off different directors' art styles than it was their storytelling abilities, because the story was pretty much there. This was just, how are you presenting it? And I think in a situation where you've got 6 or 7 directors that are coming together to try to tell a story, that would be how you would have to do it. And you'd have to find a creative way to have breaks in between each director while still going down the same road. Somebody like if the studios wanted to take a risk on it, though, you know, I don't think they will at this point. Something like with the to go back to the Marvel universe with Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness coming out, I could see them trying to say, okay, well, we're going to have 6 or 7 directors. Each different dimension that they have to travel to within this movie is going to be handled by a different director, but they're all going in the same direction. As far as storytelling goes, when it gives them the opportunity to just show their artistic style as opposed to anything else, I think it would work.
That's the
look. It happens like with. Sorry.
No, I was going to say that's what I would want to avoid doing. I mean, with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Feig kind of running the show from the EP spot. Yeah, that worked. That's one of the few examples that I think, Luke, what you're talking about with an EP running the show and giving as much freedom to the directors is a little bit of freedom, I guess. If you look at a production company like A24, or Blumhouse in particular, Jason Blum's production company, what makes a lot of their films, I think personally, so interesting to watch is because every movie that they have coming out, whether it's horror or not, is always breaking boundaries. And it's because, as he said in interviews, he always lets the director be the visionary catalyst for the entire story. And the studio does not get in the way like they do with pretty much every other major film that's been out over the last, 70, 80 years. And I think that's actually a recipe for success. And I think it's one that we'll see a bunch of the other smaller independent studios start to follow if they aren't already. I don't know. God, watching a movie like that, I think it might just give me a headache because there's so many different styles going on at once. I don't know. I like a little bit of consistency when I'm watching my film.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the trouble with the Blumhouse example is that those are not interconnected. It's not like it's a Blumhouse universe and everyone is a chronology. They're basically their own movies.
They are.
So you can allow the director to go off and do his own thing because it doesn't matter. It's his movie.
Right.
Look at Star Wars, where there was 2 directors and there's no coherence throughout the 3 of those films.
Yeah, it's dangerous. It's very dangerous.
Between the 2 of them, they couldn't figure it out. You know what I mean? So if you're going to go more than that, you got to have someone who's basically higher up than the directors that's going to be able to maintain continuity once they're gone.
But because I think the problem with the Star Wars franchise was not in the production, it was in the script writing. Because if you had somebody who had been a good script writer and written all 3 scripts before shooting, and you didn't have the directors having to worry about that, and they were just only focused on converting that script to the story or capturing it on film, do you think that may have worked then?
No, because it was the EP, right? The reason the script was different was because the EP said halfway through, okay, Kathy said, we're going to do a different script for number 2. And then we're going to go back and do another different script for number 3. So it was ultimately, it came down to the EP not handling the franchise well.
Right. But hypothetically, if the scripts were in, like Lord of the Rings, say you've got the script in place and it's just like, we need someone to convert this script into a movie, like just film it, and you didn't have to worry about the script being different. You think that would work then?
I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to leadership. I think it could work if those scripts are tight and they were coherent and they were connected. It could work, but without getting to this, that did kind of happen. They did have treatments ready for the second and third part, and they were abandoned by the production team. So I wonder, even if you do have coherent scripts and even if you do have everything set up, you still need people who are making decisions to make the right decisions.
Then I think, that's if you have the right, and maybe we should be taking directors and moving them into more executive producer roles, almost like a bit of a promotion, because I think the biggest problem with Hollywood nowadays, and we've kind of touched on it during the episode, is the fact that the studios and the executive producers have too much control. In some series, I'd say in the MCU, I'd say that one worked out okay. But for the most part, when you look at these franchises or big budget movies in general, the executive producers having too much control takes us back to that same thing, that formulaic approach that people are getting tired of watching, and it's just old. It's been done. We're tired of seeing it, and let's move on to something else. So take those directors we're talking about here, move them up, and I don't know. Let's see the true artists. Let them kind of run the show and give them the freedom. That's why I brought up the Blumhouse example, is because they let their directors be the EPs. Yeah. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see over the next 10 years because we really haven't seen a seismic shift like this in the last couple decades when it comes to how people are viewing their media. You know, it's not just through theaters anymore. So that's a good segue into the last portion of tonight's episode. What do we think is going to happen to theaters? We've kind of briefly talked about it with people in the industry when we talked about COVID in Hollywood, but I want to hear from Ian, Luke, and Michael in particular. What do you guys think is going to happen to theaters? Are they going to be completely extinct within the next 20 years? Do we think that they're making adjustments right now to continue their longevity? What's going to happen? Luke, let's start with you.
Well, I think anybody who's ever been to the movie house and eatery, who's ever been to the draft house, the first time you were there, you knew like this is the future. There's no way, like with the way that streaming services are going and the way that content is becoming distributed more and more, you know, on an individual level, I can go and get stuff. The only thing that the movie theaters have to offer is the experience. It's not I can go there and see the movie because I can see the movie anywhere. It's I can go there and see the movie and I can have some drinks and I can maybe play in the arcade and I can have some really good food. But if all you're selling is the content, which a lot of these theaters were doing, and you know, Johnny, we were talking about this earlier, like you know, the Draft House and movie, they've been around for a while. AMC and Cinemark, these guys had two decades to figure out this model of doing food and doing entertainment, and they didn't do it. And they didn't do it, and that's why they're suffering.
Right. Michael, what do you think?
That's exactly what I was going to mention is this concept of like Alamo Draft House, movie and eatery, the concept of mixing a brewery with a movie theater. Sure. Ideas like that where you're not just going to watch a film or you're not just going to watch a series, you're also getting a meal or you're having a beer or you're doing something more than just going to see a film. I think that's what a lot of these places are going to have to do in order to continue to draw the audiences in. Right. To some degree, I think that the old, the AMC style and Cinemark and things like that will probably still have to exist just because probably not to the degree that they do now. You're not going to see 20 movie theaters in a city the size of Austin, Texas. You may just see 10, but I think there's still going to be a certain number that are there because there's still going to be people that just want to pay their $5-6 like it used to be back in the day, but not anymore. Yeah. Pay their $5 or $6, go and watch their movie, leave. But places like Alamo Draft House, I was a little worried that it was kind of lightning in a bottle, that it wouldn't really ever come up again, that you wouldn't see these other businesses start to copy it, because Alamo also has the fun side effect of having an owner that really is into film and really goes out of their way to not really produce film, but to preserve things and to find unique and interesting films out there and just try and put money back into the industry itself, but not at the level of the studios, supporting more the small independent, these are real interesting films. Let's go with these and pass the money out that way. I think as long as you've got folks out there like Alamo, the theater business will always exist. Yeah, and I think Tim League had the founder of Alamo. He had, like, I agree with you. He had that vision to take just kind of weird and wacky ideas, interactive media, essentially, with the quote-alongs and the midnight showings and stuff like that, and blast it into everybody's face. And I mean, Ian, you used to go, I think you've probably been to the most out of all of us, out of any of those. Probably. What were your favorite things that Alamo has done and is still doing that makes it unique?
I was about to say just that. Like, you and I have both gone to see The Room, and we got to throw.
I bet that was fun.
It was.
I've been to The Room screening 11 times.
It's a blast.
Yeah, you get to yell out jokes along with quoting along. Like, you get to come up with your own things that you get to yell, and they encourage that, and it's great. And so, that's exactly what I was going to say. But I was also going to say, not just that, that's definitely there. There's also IMAX, where there's movies that are coming out soon, like Mortal Kombat and Dune, where I don't give a fuck. I'm going to go see that at IMAX.
Maybe in 3D,
no matter the cost, right? For that. But however, and I mentioned this in this, not the last, but the episode before that, the last episode that was on, where you asked the same question, and there's many other options. So yeah, there's theater, there's the beer and food and stuff. There's IMAX, but there's also for those who still don't want to go that way, there's a new direction that's just starting to come up. It's very new, and that's the watch parties at home. For example, what I mentioned in that episode that I was on, I was talking about how on New Year's, Alamo Drafthouse, they did an online watch party thing for the movie Mandy, and it was sold out. It was an online event that was sold out, and they were charging $30 for it.
That's fucking insane. I would never pay that much for an online streaming watch party. I would just get a few close friends together and be like, come over.
But I mean, that's just like the biggest option that I'm talking about. But Facebook does it. I do it in my Facebook group all the time.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're going with the streaming services is that's an option. It's an option.
Yeah, Facebook is cracking down on it because I mean it is technically illegal, but there is a new website. I don't remember the name of it right now, but I did discover a website that that will allow you to host watch parties with your friends. It's a different website. You call them together, and you get all your friends, and then you stream something from your own streaming service, something that you're already paying for, like Netflix or Amazon Prime or something, and then you can host it to as up to I think 12 people at a time, and so you're already paying for it, so it's not illegal. And
So yeah, and I think that's something that'll actually help the streaming services. But sticking with just the theaters themselves, what do you guys think about? This is something that I came across the other day. They talked about extending the aisles in between seats out like another 6 inches to a foot, and not only having those leather reclining chairs, but essentially changing them into like chaise lounges or kind of like little beds, and giving people like complimentary blankets and pillows and stuff, and letting them watch the movie.
So a place for homeless people to go is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, pay $20 and
the city of Austin will rent out all those theaters for homeless people.
But what do you guys think about kind of what
real talk?
Would that I don't know, would something like that, even making it more comfortable and making it more like home? I mean, essentially, that's what we're doing by adding the gourmet foods and the alcohol, but except you get surround sound and a bigger movie screen. But they're adding the comforts of being able to sit on your couch or in your bed and stream something on your tablet, but instead you get to watch it in a theater. Would something like that entice you guys to go to the theaters even more?
Well, Johnny, you and I had the opportunity to go to the Globe Theater and see Othello. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that was fun, except for my view was obstructed the entire time because that fucking pylon was right in the middle of my view.
Exactly, and the seats were uncomfortable. Right. And so, you fast forward 500 years, and we're now we're talking about putting chaise lounges and like blankets and
maybe comfy beds
like
theaters.
I don't know. To me, like that's almost like too much. Like, this is getting a little ridiculous. Like it's turning into WALL-E a little bit too much, guys. Can we back off a little bit?
And the thing is, it already kind of exists. I mean, at least here in Austin, there's what is that place called iPic?
iPic, yeah.
I think you can fit maybe 25 people in that theater total, maybe 20 because of the size of the seats, and it's basically like lounging beds with blankets and every yeah, it's every little luxury that you could think of. But I'm pretty sure those tickets run anywhere from $40 to $50 a pop.
Yeah,
and I'm sure there's folks out there that do want to go and lay in a bed and watch it in a movie theater with 20 other people in the same room with a blanket that's been shared between 86,000 other people. But I just can't see the vast majority of people wanting to pay $40 to $50.
Would you guys go see Would you go see a movie if they removed all of the recliners and chairs and just put one gigantic mattress and everybody,
California King,
everybody, 40, 50 people had to share the bed? but the tickets were
Only
like
if
$5.
we're watching Caligula.
Oh, that would be perfect for like maybe they should do that at the Draft House.
Grossest like movie show ever.
Yep.
We've talked about a million times on this podcast. I think with even other guests outside of yourselves, it's just been a general consensus is that going to the movies, going to the theaters it's an event. It's so you can share the experience of watching a film with other people and hearing their reactions, and it makes a difference. And as opposed to watching a film by yourself in your living room. So do you guys think because they're going down the experience route, maybe that's one of the only reasons that theaters will be able to stay open within the next 20 years. Do you guys think that the 4D route is a potential way to go? And for those of you that don't know what the 4D route is, we briefly talked about this. If you've ever been to Universal Studios or Disney World, you have those really interactive rides where it's a giant screen in front of you. You're inside of seats that are basically on hydraulics, and they move you around with the camera. If you go, if like the scene is taking place in the ocean, it sprays water in your face. If you go through a field of flowers, it sprays a fragrance in your face, something like that. I enjoy doing those rides. I don't know if I could do it for 2 hours, but what do you guys think? Is that something you'd be interested in, or do you think it's just something that would just drive you crazy?
So let me tell you a tale. Going back,
Perfect.
I'm trying to think of the year. It was probably like 2010, 2011. Yep, 1940.
Hydraulics in 1930.
We were down in Galveston, and we were down at Moody Gardens,
Okay.
and it was Christmas time. And they had one of those 4D theaters.
Right.
And what were they showing at the time? It's the Polar Express,
Okay.
right? Because it's Christmas time. So we're going to watch a Christmas movie, I guess you call it.
They drop ice on you and shit like that.
So we go into this theater, and it was like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. So it's the last showing they've got. And it's, to be fair, it's not the full movie. It's only snippets of the movie, like the main portions of it that you're going through. And it was probably a total of half an hour that you're sitting in this theater going through this. And I want to say the cost was like $25, $30 to get into this thing.
For 30 minutes?
Yeah, it was not cheap for 30 minutes.
Is there any other entertainment that's like $1 a minute? That's crazy. Get a hooker for that.
Pretty
Not a good
much.
one.
So, and not have as many diseases when you come out the other
Skid
side.
Row,
So
yeah.
we get into this thing, and the production starts and everything's going fine. And, the seat kind of shakes when the train's going and different stuff. And it gets to the scene where they're starting to pass out hot chocolate to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so the little spray thing in front of you is supposed to spritz out this smell that's like, hey, there's
Peppermints
hot
or
chocolate
something.
in the room. Except the moment that the thing sprayed, everybody in that audience started coughing and hacking and like falling out of their seats. There were people that were like running for the exit, like throwing the exit doors open, because apparently all of those little devices had molded over. So with the stuff sprayed out, it sprayed mold straight in your face. And like everybody in that theater was freaking out. So no, I really don't want to go to a 4D theater. When it comes down to it, the fourth dimension is time, and that's about the only thing you're wasting seeing that movie.
Nice. I would like to go once or twice, not do that, but I would like to do one without mold once or twice, but not really every time.
Yeah, not for a 2 hour long event. I feel like it would get old after a while, because I feel like part of the appeal of watching a film is that you are able to sit comfortably still, relatively. And if you're it's like a ride, basically. It's essentially like you're at an amusement park. So I don't know. I know that there's been a lot of talk on a lot of podcasts that I've been listening to where they've been mentioning 4D as the future of theaters, and I don't want to believe it. I don't know if I would be able to do that for 2 hours. I feel like I would get motion sickness or something, and I'd have to leave.
They said that about 3D too. So
Yeah, I'm kind of
see, I think I would enjoy it, but like I said, not every movie though.
Yeah,
like once or twice. That's
Like
fine.
Hardcore Henry would be great 4D.
Oh, that would be
yeah.
amazing.
just
Titanic.
first person all the time.
Yep.
Not the English Patient. What are you gonna do with the English Patient? What are you gonna do? Huh?
You're not going to watch
Or
it.
you don't want to know the kind of smells they got to make for that.
Yeah,
movie.
Oh, God.
a little
Ew.
scalpel will come out and cut you and crap.
Rotting flesh. Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good.
But you know what? I'll tell you something else. I am the proud owner of an Oculus Quest, and that is, I mean, it's only in the beginning. I mean, some like games and stuff aren't really that great, but I mean, they're constantly developing new stuff. So like I can see if we continue going the virtual reality way, there'll be, you just sit there with a strap on your head, but it's more, I guess, like Hardcore Henry is like you're part of a video game, but it's a movie. It's more interactive in that way.
It's
surrounding you.
Because a movie, I don't know if that should necessarily be interactive, because you're trying to be told a story.
It becomes a video game at that point. It seems like.
I mean, it would be cool to be hiking around Gondor or whatever. But I think if you don't have that narrative telling you the story, like if you can just do what you want, I don't think that because I think that'd be great for video games. Don't get me wrong. I'm very excited about VR, but for a movie, I don't think that would be good.
Well, yeah, I mean, not exactly that much interactive level. I mean, they actually have made short films in VR that I've watched, and it's pretty much you just sitting there, and like I'm sitting in a swivel chair that goes 360 degrees, and I'm just looking around me, and I'm watching this movie, but in all directions, and it's a lot of fun.
It would be,
and again, I'm not saying for every movie. I'm just saying,
it'd be a cool experience.
It might be neat if they took old movies and because could you imagine if they somehow did a 3D kind of rebuild of The Shining, and you were able to kind of
I don't know if I'd be able to watch that.
The movie's going on, and so you can be in the room and watch it, or you could go off and see other stuff that was happening.
That would be a virtual world, though. Yeah, that'd be that would straight up be a video game.
Yeah, but that might be interesting.
That's bordering on video game, though. That's the trouble. That's like what a Shining video game should be. Is that?
Yeah. And again, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you're there. There's nothing you can do. You're not taking action, but you're just there witnessing it like a movie. But it's in every direction you look, you get more. You're in the room.
Yeah.
But you're still watching the narrative.
Yeah, it would be super interactive. Yeah, and I think at some point, we'll probably get into that. I don't know if it'll ever take over, but then again, might after we're all dead.
Yeah,
who the fuck knows? So, guys, unfortunately, we are wrapping up for tonight's episode. Once again, I want to thank all you guys for joining us, especially at the last minute. And I know sounds like everyone started to quiet down from the caffeine rushes that we all had over an hour ago. But before we go, as we do every week, I want to go ahead and give everyone a chance for their movie recommendation for our listeners this week. We're going to start with the panel host this week. Gary, I'm going to let you go first. What film are you going to recommend? Maybe it has an A-lister, maybe it doesn't. But I'm going to let you be the judge of that. What are you recommending for our viewers this week?
This week, I'm going to recommend a movie from the 70s with Burt Reynolds called Smokey and the Bandit.
Oh, yeah.
It's a fun cross-country tour, and just a great time. And
sweet Sally Fields ass.
Yeah, buddy.
It's a Family Guy reference, but yeah.
But my recommendation will be Smokey the Bandit, because you've got a long way to go and a short time to get there, ladies.
Long way to go.
And a short time to get there. They're going to say, well, we can't be done. Something like that. I don't know.
I don't remember the lyrics. It's been a while.
Johnny?
I'm going to go ahead and recommend for this week. I was debating. I'm just going to recommend both. I'm not going to go into full description, though. I'm going to stick with my Schwarzenegger pick, and I'm going to recommend Deathbed. No, don't watch Deathbed. You will regret it. Ian, we'll do an episode on that on your podcast one day, maybe.
Is that the bed that eats people?
It is. It is the bed that eats people.
Oh, no.
They remade it in 2019.
It's a horrible fucking movie.
Did you see they made a sequel too called Rape Stove? I don't know if you ever saw.
What?
We're watching that tonight.
We're not watching that tonight. We might probably
watch Killer Couch. That's more entertaining.
Anyways, moving on past that, because don't actually watch those. I'm going to recommend both True Lies and Kindergarten Cop for those of you that want to see Schwarzenegger at his comedic best. check out Kindergarten Cop. Well, I guess
Last Action Hero.
Last Action Hero
yeah.
was good. Twins was good. Junior, whatever. Schwarzenegger's got a lot of classics. But Kindergarten Cop is probably my favorite comedy of his. And then True Lies is actually probably my second favorite James Cameron movie, I would have to say.
Boys have a penis and girls have a vagina.
It's the last good movie that Tom Arnold and Jamie Lee Curtis were actually a part of. So unless you count Freaky Friday, just kidding. Slide whistle. But yeah, I would say those would be my recommendations for this week. So check them out. Michael, how about you?
Since we're talking about A-listers, there's a little 1962 film called Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. It's actually a fun little, technically a psychological thriller, but it's not really that psychological. It's just a lot of fun. Betty Davis, Joan Crawford, 2 stars in it. They had a lot of off-screen drama that went on for many, many years, and both of them were cast in this movie, and that off-screen drama definitely comes on screen, and it makes really good chemistry between the 2 characters. It's a lot of fun to watch, kind of a classic movie.
That's a good one. I've heard of that one a million times, and I actually haven't seen it, so I may actually watch that this week. I will take your recommendation on it. Luke.
So I couldn't decide. I kind of had it down between 2, and I'm not sure. Well, I'll go with this one because I think it's apropos, because I think it is not only what I consider to be a perfect film. I think it's the perfect film for the movie-going era, and it's the kind of movie that it's perfect for going out and seeing in the movie theaters in the way that we're probably not going to be able to do anymore. And that movie is The Matrix. I think that is one of the best movies ever made. I think the hero's journey is so well done. It does such classic storytelling, but it does it in ways that you don't even realize it's happening until the movie's over. And it's exactly what you want when you go to a movie in the theater. And it's exactly what the movie theater experience was made for.
Yeah,
maybe we should do a podcast on The Matrix.
Maybe we should. Maybe our next one will be on the Matrix franchise. Maybe so. It's almost like that's funny. We actually forgot to mention Keanu Reeves in our A-listers earlier. He was certainly one of the ones of the 2000s. I don't know why I forgot about that. Ian, how about you?
Sure, I would say so. Yeah.
I was gonna say an A-lister movie or maybe a Pam Grier movie, but I did in last week's episode. You mentioned Deathbed, so I'm just going to go the whole other direction and say, So Bad It's Good movie, an underrated bad movie that's really good. About kind of like Deathbed, it's an object that's alive, but it's called I Bought a Vampire Motorcycle, and it's awesome. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a guy who bought a vampire motorcycle.
Is the motorcycle a vampire?
Yes.
Okay. Or it belonged to a vampire. I wasn't sure.
A satanic hippie vampire guy got killed on top of it, and his blood drained into the gas tank.
That's exactly what Deathbed was. Okay,
yeah,
great.
All right.
Copycat.
They're all part of the same cinematic universe.
No, Michael, no, Michael, we're not. No,
they might be.
But I
Gary,
mean, it's great
this.
though. It's just like the guy that's just driving his vampire motorcycle around. He doesn't know there's a vampire motorcycle, but he gets into a fight with a biker gang, and so the motorcycle just goes and just on a rampage, just murdering people. And it's hokey, it's dumb, but it's just really entertaining. And then there's a whole exorcism scene that's just off the wall ridiculous, and it's really entertaining, and I recommend that one.
All right.
Does the motorcycle have like a Hungarian accent?
It doesn't talk, but
it's
it
a
does
motorcycle,
roar.
Michael. Come on.
It doesn't talk, Michael.
Get serious.
Come on now, because it's a serious film, and this is a serious podcast. Can't you, seriously, can't
What
you tell
happened to our accents? I thought we were going to do
Oh,
them.
yes, all the peons. Gary said, what happened to our accents? Oh. Michael, Luke, Ian, thanks for joining us. Make sure to check out Ian's podcast, Movies So Bad They're Good, Midnight Cult Classics and Camp, Facebook group of the same name. Go ahead and make sure you join up this week for lots of fun watch parties on movies that he just suggested, like Death Pet and something about a vampire motorcycle. And Ian, your other podcast, Having a Beer with Ian, where it's a podcast with a bunch of people named Ian talking about Ian-related topics. I am Jonny.
And I'm Gary.
And I'm the spirit of Neil Riley. Just kidding. He'll be back next week. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you next week. Take care. Thank you for tuning in to Lead Feather Productions' podcast of I Don't Give a Flick. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast so that you never miss an episode. Podcasts are available on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and everywhere podcasts are hosted. I Don't Give a Flick is hosted and produced by Johnny Blackburn, Gary Elmore, and Neil Riley. Executive producer Johnny Blackburn, technical director, editor, and audio mixer Gary Elmore. I Don't Give a Flick is a Lead Feather production. Copyright Lead Feather Productions 2021.
Yay.